In this tutorial, we'll be doing an easier maintenance task. We'll be tackling the cleaning and replacement of the air filter. I have a K&N filter, so I'll simply be recharging the air filter and putting it back in once it's gone through the cleaning and drying process. But you may have a standard air filter to replace, but in either case, the process is the same. I currently have a booster plug mod that I've had for years, but unplugging it is the same as undoing the original plug. I'm just stating this in case you notice that I have a bit more wires around the plug than you do. Now, this will probably be the easiest part of this whole process. We're just going to grab our key, remove the seat, and place it to the side. Next, we're going to release the tank fastener bolts with the 5mm T-handle hex key. The two 5mm fasteners are located at the top of the tank and just below the steering stem. Be careful when releasing the fasteners, as they do have small washers underneath them. You don't want these things to fall underneath your tank and lodge somewhere where you can't find them. Once we have the fasteners off, we can now prop up the tank, and there are several different ways to do this. A quick tip before we prop the tank. This is going to be easiest when the tank is not full and closer to empty. You can still prop it up, but some methods will not work as easily due to the amount of gas in the tank. Now, my tank is somewhat empty, so I just used a bungee cord around the license plate and then I clipped that to the top of the tank to keep it suspended. At this point, you should have your method figured out on how you're going to prop the tank, because underneath the tank there are hoses and connections that can be damaged if you let the tank rotate too far back. As I mentioned before, here are the hoses and connectors I wanted to make you aware of. For this project, you really don't need to mess with any of these items, but for reference, these are hoses for the emission, some electric connectors, and the main fuel line. Now we can simply disconnect the air sensor plug. We can now start removing the 8mm screws. These are all on the perimeter of the airbox, and there are a few on the back underneath the harness, and we can get to those once we remove the harness. As you go to replace these, make sure not to over tighten them. The plastic is pretty soft, so if you press in too hard, you can bore these things out. The harness covers a couple of the remaining bolts for the upper assembly. There is one torque screw on the top that holds the sensor connection in place, so we can remove the ones holding the harness first to get to them. Here I have a cable zip tied down so it won't interfere with the tank in its resting position. We can just cut and discard it. Once you've removed the last fastener, you can let the module and harness rest. If the sensor in the rear has not already come off, you can set it aside now and remove the last remaining airbox screws. Just a heads up before we remove the airbox upper assembly, the immobilizer is still connected inside. From this view, you can see the wiring going into the airbox. Lift the upper assembly and you can now see the immobilizer and its connection plug and harness. It's easier to remove the plug from the harness bracket with the pick first. With the plug connector removed from the harness bracket, we can now unplug and set the upper assembly aside. Now you can simply remove the air filter. Here you can inspect the condition of your filter and decide if you need to replace it. Normally, a quick visual inspection will do. Just pop in the new filter and button her back up and you're good to go. But if you have a renewable filter like the Canadian filter I have, you can tell how dirty it is by the discoloration and the lack of light coming through the filter mesh. Normally when you renew the filter, the mesh looks a little purple. And if you lift the filter up to the light, you can tell how much dirt has collected. Mine is not that bad, and I can let it go for a few more miles, but since I'm here, I might as well do it. All right, well, that seems to wrap this one up. So hopefully I've helped some of you viewers take on this task and build a little bit more confidence in wrenching on your own motorcycle. If you have any comments, drop them down below. Any questions as well, I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. Happy wrenching, guys.